Hello, I'm George Larrimore, and welcome to Vietnam 360 on the Library Channel. We really appreciate you watching today. Vietnam 360 is a show for and about Vietnam veterans and other people whose lives were affected by the Vietnam War, which was long and controversial. One of the things that I want to talk about today is an expression called semper fidelis, which is one among the first words you learn when you go in Marine boot camp. Semper fidelis, or as Marines will often say, semper fi. It means always faithful. Our guest today is a former Marine, Roy Dozier, and he has had extensive experience in Vietnam. We're going to talk about that with him today. Roy, thank you so much for being here on our show.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start out. Tell us, where you were from when you went in the Marine Corps and how you happened to get in the Marine Corps.
Well, I was in college and I had a deferment, and my money ran out, so I decided I would go to Cleveland, Ohio, where I had relatives, and go to work so I could earn more money for college. But that changed my status from 4F to 1A, and Uncle Sam came looking for me. And so, as a result, I did not want to go in before my 19th birthday, so I went to the Marine recruiter and asked him to, if you let me stay out until after my 19th birthday, I'll go in the Marine Corps. So they put me in on a deferment plan. February 8th, I was inducted into the United States Marine Corps.
So we're laughing about this now, but you try to understand that in, what was this, 1966?
This was in 65.
65. The Vietnam War was just getting started. The Marines were the first ones to land at Da Nang. I think anybody who knew anything about the military at that point knew the Marine Corps was going to be in it deep. So you waived the draft so you could celebrate your birthday and ended up in the Marine Corps.
Exactly. And down to Paris Island I went. And, of course, after all my basic training, I was stationed at Norfolk Naval Shipyard for a year. And during that time, when my orders came out, my initial orders were to go to HMX-1, which is now called Marine 1, or the President's helicopter. And I think they might have found out that I was a Rockefeller grantee, which was Republican at the time. I think politics got into it because Lyndon Johnson was the president at the time. And
what does being a Rockefeller grantee mean?
Well, I integrated a white college in Arkansas under a grant from Winthrop Rockefeller. Winthrop Rockefeller moved from New York to Arkansas and started making his way to be the big man in Arkansas, and he's going to run for governor. So he thought education, which is still relevant today, education was the #1 way to do that. And with integration going on, I was one of the first dozen people to go to the College of the Ozarks in Clarksville, Arkansas.
But your money ran out and you had to do something.
I had to do something. I didn't have any money to start with, and I only had that grant and a little work study, and so it just wasn't feasible for me to just stay in college and struggle. So I decided I'd go make some money.
They took you out of Air Wing, took you out of being in the helicopter unit, and put you in the infantry.
Well, I was really an MP at Norfolk Naval Shipyard. I was always an 0311.
And an 0311 is an infantry job description.
Right. You know, every Marine is an 0311 first, infantry first. But I was also an MP, which was a 5811, so I had another MOS. So it looked as though I was just going to, I was a spit and polish Marine, so it looked like I was heading for the presidential helicopter. You see the Marines standing outside the helicopter, in and out. So
that's Marine 1.
That's Marine 1 now. Yeah, it was called HMX-1 back in 1966. But I didn't get that, so I got orders cut for Vietnam, and off to Vietnam I went.
Now, by that point, what did you know about Vietnam, and what were your feelings about going to Vietnam?
Didn't know a whole lot about it, except that it was war, and being a Marine, war didn't bother you at the time. Yeah. Young Marine, war does not bother you. That's you're first to fight, and that's what we were in there to do.
What did your family say to you about going?
Oh, they were a little concerned, of course, about going off to war. My mother's husband, who is not my father, but my mother's husband was a World War II vet, so she understood the perils of the war, and she understood the aftermath of a husband coming home after the war. So she was concerned.
Yeah. Tell us about when you got to Vietnam, where you were, what you were doing when you first arrived.
I arrived in Vietnam in a place just outside of the imperial city of Hue called Phu Bai, and I was a replacement for Mike Company, 3rd Battalion, 4th Marine, who had just come off of Operation Hastings.
All right, and just so our audience understands, he says Mike Company. Each battalion has 3 companies.
Right.
And companies are made up of platoons and squads so that each part of a company breaks down into smaller units so that there is discipline, so that you have jobs to do, and if someone goes down, then someone else takes that job.
Yes, it's broken down in threes, from a 3-man rifle team or fire team, we call them, to a 3-team squad, to a 3-squad platoon, to a 3-platoon company, to a 3 or 4 company battalion. So it's basically broken down into threes.
And 3 battalion regiment.
And that's right, 3 battalion regiment. And I was in Mike Company. Okay, I actually was the 2nd squad leader of 3rd platoon in Mike Company of 3rd Battalion, 4th Marine Regiment, and 3rd Marine Division.
Now, you were a grenade?
I was a grenadier, yeah. I carried an
Grenadier,
M79 grenade launcher when I first arrived. That's what I was assigned. Carried a grenade launcher and a .45.
Now, grenade launcher, just so that our audience understands, you've probably seen pictures of it, is a little shortish kind of weapon that holds around about that big around.
Like a shotgun, has a 40-millimeter round, and you fire it, and it arms itself after about 30 feet, and then becomes a grenade.
Yeah, so you can hurl a grenade a lot further than you could throw it.
To throw it, yes.
So you come in, and you're a grenadier in this unit, and you told me earlier that something happened. You didn't know anything about combat. You didn't know anything or very little about Vietnam by that point, but something happened to you pretty quick.
Yes, I having been in the Corps for a while, I had a little rank. So as a grenadier, I was like the 2nd highest ranking person in my squad. And after 8 days of being there, my squad leader was gored by a water buffalo.
Wow.
And when he was gored by the water buffalo, of course, took him out, and I was the senior person in that squad. So I had to take over the squad.
Now, what would make sense to a lot of people would be that, well, the most experienced person would take that job. That's not the way it works.
No, it's
There's
not.
a rank structure.
It's
so
a
you
rank
were,
structure.
what, a lance corporal?
I was a lance corporal with quite a bit of time in grade, and so I ended up taking over that squad.
And again, as anyone probably knows from movies or discussions or reading about Vietnam, one of your first concerns is that whoever's leading you doesn't know what they're doing. So here you are, and these guys behind you that are now serving under you don't necessarily know whether you have your act together or not.
Right. They pretty much knew I didn't have my act together just from the fact that I'd been there 8 days, and some of them had been there 8, 10 months.
Yeah.
So they were a little skeptical at first, but one thing I'd learned about leadership is you need to know what you don't know and try to find somebody to work with you that knows the things that you don't know. So immediately I went to my squad and I said, I know that I don't know anything about, patrolling, ambushing, all of these things. I don't know anything about this. I know how to deal with people. So I will deal with all of the upper ranks to make sure that we have what we need while I learn what we need to do. But you guys are going to have to teach me what we need to do in order for all of us to stay alive. And the first thing they asked me for was automatic switches for their M14 rifles. Everybody wanted to have an automatic rifle, and that was good to me.
Now, the M14 rifle is a rifle they used up till about early '67. Is that right?
Right. Matter of fact,
it's a longer rifle with a wooden stock, which looks like a rifle used in World War II.
Right. Weighs about 8 pounds.
M16.
Yeah, weighs about 8 pounds, but it's a very good machine. And believe it or not, we managed to not switch rifles the entire time I was there. Mm-hmm. We still had M14s instead of the newer M16. Of course, after a couple of tries, they got that lighter weapon, perfected, and it worked good. But initially, it didn't work very well, so we managed to keep our 14s.
We have a lot of people in our audience, I think, are probably Vietnam veterans or combat veterans of some era. But I would guess that most people don't have any knowledge of what combat is like. I would like to ask you just to tell us how it feels, if you can, how it feels when you're out there and you're not sure what's in the bush ahead of you, you're not sure of what's happening around you, and what it's like when someone begins to shoot at you. What does that feel like to you?
Well, you learn to be reactive during your basic training and your infantry training. You learn to be reactive. So you don't really think about it when it happens. If somebody starts shooting at you, you're always expecting it because you're in war and you know they're out there. So when somebody starts shooting at you, your first instinct is to gain fire superiority. And you immediately go to do that. You just go through various motions. You don't be afraid. None of this. Firefights last from 30, 45 seconds to 2 minutes at most. Seems like a lifetime. But if you can gain fire superiority, you usually come out the winner. And that's what we try to do. Then you get scared. You get real scared. But it's over with.
Did you react right the first time it happened to you? Did you do what you felt like you were supposed to do after you thought about it later?
Actually, I thought I did pretty good early on. I remember after I'd been there 8, 9 months, I thought I made a couple of mistakes that, actually cost some of my men their lives. Yeah. It's just that I called a couple of people out to move, and when I called them out, they raised up. Mm-hmm. I couldn't keep them from raising up, but maybe they thought that I should have, done something else rather than call them out right there. They raised up and they were hit. So sometimes you just, I look back at it and I say, I could have maybe kept them down. Mm-hmm. That's part of our training too. We have this wire with live fire over the wire, and you have to crawl through under the wire. We have the training, but sometimes you just, in the heat of a battle, you do something that you didn't think about until after it's over.
But again, going back to your training, you learn to react. Then you learn from experience what else to do.
Exactly. You learn to see things and hear things much clearer as time goes along, and that helps you a lot. Some of the battles. I remember my first really bad battle. There's a book written about someone else on that fateful day. It was a tough battle. I lost my first man that day, October 6, 1966. It's an infamous day because everybody know about Captain Carroll being killed and Gunny Jeremiah Purdy being all blown up. And they have these pictures, one of the most infamous pictures, who actually in this book here mm-hmm. that we have. This is the book written by Jeremiah Purdy, and in that book there's one of those infamous pictures mm-hmm. that been in the news.
This is one of the iconic photographs of the Vietnam War. We'll show it to you bigger here on the screen, but this is a picture that if you've seen much about Vietnam, you've seen that picture.
And it was my first day of I lost my first man that day, and what happened?
What was his name?
Corporal Vargas. Yeah. Okay, Antonio Vargas. Yeah. lost a couple of bloggers from New York. He was a machine gun team leader.
Yeah.
And when we make attacks, if we're going to be the lead squad, or what we call a point squad, we usually take the machine gun team with us. Mm-hmm. If we're going to be the next squad, we usually take the rocket team with us. And if we're going to be the third squad, we take the 81 millimeter mortars. Mm-hmm. I think that's what you were part of the mortar team. Yeah. Well, we take the third squad, usually have the mortar team. The first squad takes the machine gun team because we're going to have to fight. And that's what happened that day. My squad was the point squad, and we were taking the first hill on Mother's Ridge. And we took the first hill on Mother's Ridge, took most of the day, and we were pretty banged up and beat up. And so Kilo Company started marching through our perimeter, going to take the next hill on Mother's Ridge, when the artillery group, when we called in the artillery group fired on the wrong hill. They fired on the hill that we'd already taken, mm-hmm. rather than the next one to take. And that's when Captain Carroll was killed and Purdy was all.
So these photographs that we're looking at were taken, people wounded by what's called friendly fire.
Absolutely. It's real unfortunate. It happens. We're human. We make mistakes. Plus the fact that the maps over there were about 12 to 17 degrees off. Mm-hmm. So you could call in a spot A, and the round actually ended up over here at spot B because of the difference in the maps. So it just was an unfortunate situation.
Now, back up for a second, if you would. There's an expression that you sometimes hear: the fog of war, that the confusing nature of being in a firefight or a battle. Tell us what that's like when you're trying to make decisions that people's lives are based on. Tell us what it's like when you, as a lance corporal leading a squad, are trying to make decisions and tell us how confusing that is and how hard it is to sort that out.
Well, I'm gonna give you a scenario where we were going out to ambush, and instead of us going out and setting up our ambush site, obviously the enemy had seen where we had been patrolling, because we usually patrol before we ambush. So we were going out to set up the ambush, and we got ambushed. In that particular situation, it was like all I could do was, tell everybody to just fire, fire, fire. And I could almost tell when somebody was hit because I could no longer hear their fire. Mm-hmm. And one of the people that I could no longer hear was my radio man, because my radio man carried a 12-gauge shotgun. Okay, and I could no longer hear. That's what we used to start our ambushes, was that 12-gauge shotgun. Radio man would start spraying the area with that shotgun, and he'd get on the radio. And that signaled all of us to fire. Well, when we were ambushed, he started firing. But due to the fact that they could see that shotgun muzzle flash, they hit him pretty quick. And I lost him that night. But you have to, then that meant that I had to not only work my squad, but I also had to work the radio, because I no longer have a radio man. You have to make up for these things. So I had to roll over to my radio man and get that radio and, keep communication back with the base. So you just do it. You just do what you do. And if you think about it, most people who think about things during a fight usually lose their life, because you'll get scared. There's no doubt about you getting scared, but you cannot be afraid during the process. You get an adrenaline rush. I've had an adrenaline rush so strong that I could feel them in my spine. But you still have to keep going, because you cannot stop. If you stop, you'll get killed.
Again, I want to try to help our people in our audience understand that there's choices you have to make, and how quickly you have to make them, and how life and death they are. Your radio operator gets hit. You need the radio more than you need him, and you know that. How do you choose between let me help this guy, let me treat this guy, let me bandage this guy, and taking the radio, and because the radio is your line to save everybody else.
Yes, I had to think about the whole group, and I had to keep that line of communication over so they could get to us as quick as they could, because I didn't know how long it was going to last. I didn't know how many of the enemy we had, hit. I did know, I did know that just as our firing was kind of dwindling down, so was theirs. So I know we're making impact. We're hitting them. We're making impact. But, my side's going down too. So, it's going to be like, are we going to be able to make it? Are we going to be, I got to keep this line of communication over. Plus the fact I did not see a wound on my radio. It was dark anyway, but I did not see any blood or anything coming from my radio man, although I knew he was hit. What I found out later is the round hit the dirt underneath him and split him open. Yeah. And I didn't see that. Otherwise, I probably could have kept him alive. Usually in a situation like that, when you're hit, if you roll him over and keep water on him, but again, you don't really have time to do first aid yet.
Right.
But if I'd have rolled him over and kept his intestine wet, I probably could have saved him. But his intestine was in the sand. Talk
to me, if you would, about Corpsman. Just again, trying to help our audience understand some things today. The Marine Corps is part of the Naval Service, and the people who are the medical personnel in the field in Vietnam or anywhere else there's combat are Navy corpsmen, and they are attached to grunt companies, or infantry companies are known as grunt companies, and the corpsmen are the guys that you rely on for life and death. And invariably, and I don't know how it was with you, but invariably they're called Doc, because nobody remembers the name. Doc, I need you. Doc, come on up. Corpsman up, people would say when somebody got wounded. What's it like with working with those guys?
I had two love affairs in Vietnam. One was with my corpsman, and the other was with Huey helicopters, because I've been saved, and my group has been saved so many times by those two. I remember one of my corpsmen real well because he was named Memphis, and he was from Philadelphia. But Doc Memphis, one day we were going down a path, and two people got hit right on the front end, and we had to take cover, and those two people were laying out there. And I tried my best to keep Doc Memphis from going out there to get them. He went out there and got them both. And that's what the doc could do for you. The doc, I don't care what the situation is, if you say corpsman up, the corpsman would come up. I remember when I was wounded, I immediately called corpsman up just because this is automatic. You're wounded, corpsman up. I called corpsman up, and then I realized, I might get the corpsman killed trying to get to me. So I told him, don't come. But, that's just an automatic, corpsman up. And I actually, when people ask you about, do you have any effects or anything of Vietnam? The only effect that I have found that I have is when I hear those two blades of that Huey helicopter popping through the air. Even today, so one flew over right now, I get that feel, I get that chill of a Huey helicopter popping through the air coming to get me.
You see that in movies, you see that on television.
Right. Those are my two love affairs from Vietnam. Yeah. Corpsman and Huey helicopter.
I mean, corpsmen Marines are full of macho a lot of the time, full of bravado, and Marines will tell you they're the greatest fighting force that's ever lived. But corpsmen are just as fearless.
Yes, we have a thing called the 3 Bs, and they are dependent on the corpsman and the helicopter. That's beans, because it's tough to fight when you're hungry. Okay, bullets. It's tough to fight when you don't have ammunition, and bandages. Okay, because you're going to get wounded more than likely. Yeah. A lot of times you might not even get hit. Sometimes you fall on things just trying to get out of the way of a round. So beans, bullets, and bandages. Those are our 3 Bs, and we depended heavily on the 3 Bs in order to fight the war.
Tell us about being wounded. When did that happen to you, and what were the circumstances?
We were taking a hill just before Memorial Day, May 28, 1967. We had just come out of the DMZ. We had swept into the DMZ, and I'll maybe tell you a little bit more about that. But we had come out, and we've come out of DMZ good, and we finished our operation, and we went to assist another company, or another battalion actually, in a serious fight around Cantillon. And it got bad. That's the day I was telling you I called the two guys. That was one of those days. That same day, we got on top of a bunker. We got a couple men on top of the bunker, and they threw grenades into the bunker. And this artist, he was a real good artist. He got his fingers shot off right there when he threw the grenade in the bunker. Blew the bunker up, put him on top of it, and he got his fingers shot off. It was Charlie Babb. He was from Kentucky. But it was surreal, kind of. We were just making our way up that hill, and all of a sudden, a mortar round went off, and shrapnel hit me in my left leg, and that's why I say I immediately hollered Corman up. Then I realized I'm not hurt that bad. I can't be calling Corman up because he'll be coming again. So I immediately told him, no, don't come, I'm okay. And we continued to take that hill that day, and I stayed there that entire day, and I took the last helicopter out that evening because my leg wasn't really that bad, and I've never had any problem with it. And I tell people today that, I see Purple Heart recipients, and my Purple Heart is so insignificant in comparison to those who lost one leg, two legs, both arms, sometimes arms and legs, and I just, mine is really insignificant.
Yeah. Well, I'd argue with it. It's not insignificant. Nothing that happened to you there is insignificant. Let me ask you about race. African American in the Marine Corps, at a time in which there is a lot of upheaval in the country, a lot of insistence, demand for civil rights among black people in America. Did you give that any consideration? Was that play any part of how your day-to-day life went in terms of, should I be in Vietnam? Is it wrong for me to be here?
I didn't give it a lot of thought when I was in Vietnam, but I can guarantee you that once I got back from Vietnam, I was a real activist. I was an activist, the kind of activist who didn't care about what happened because I could go in the streets, I could march, I could do it. Even though I was in uniform, I'd take that uniform off and I would go with the civilians and I would do those things simply because it was a need and that was the leadership. And we had this I guess this attitude that, you can't really do a whole lot to me because I've been to Vietnam and back, So I was an activist, and we had planned to go to Mexico City. Everybody knows the Carlos and the story of Mexico City. We had planned to go to Mexico City. And
so the Olympics in 1968.
1968 Olympics, yeah. Yes. We had planned to go to that. And for the most part, we were so active that the military understood that, Marine Corps understood that, and they kept us out of the United States most of the time. I spent time in Panama. I spent time in Puerto Rico. I spent time on a Caribbean cruise. I spent time at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. They were trying their best to keep us out of the country because we were kind of the leadership. I saw it looking back and in retrospect and talking to my mother and grandparents, the same kind of movement after World War II. The people who came back is like, hey, I just fought for this country. Now give me some of the benefits of this country. And we kind of had that same feel after coming back from Vietnam. But in Vietnam, we just fought and we stuck together because we knew that was the only way we could get back. The only way we could get back is that we stick together, fight together, and win together.
Semper Fidelis.
Semper Fidelis. Always faithful.
Always faithful. Go back to Vietnam for a second. Tell me where you were And I know you've explained it to me, but I'd just like our audience to hear where you.
We were in what they call I Corps, which is the most northern corps of Vietnam. We were up what they call Leatherneck Square. Leatherneck Square was Cam Lo, Cantien. These are the corners of Leatherneck Square. Cam Lo, Cantien, Dung Ha, and Khe Sanh. And we were in that square. And in that square were things like the Rock Pile, the Qua Viet River. All of these, you can look on the map and you can make this big square. And that's where I spent all of my time inside that square.
And Hue, which became
Hue was just outside the square.
Yeah.
Hue was
and
just
Khe Sanh.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Khe Sanh was one of the corners of the square, the southwest corner of the square. I'm sorry, the northwest corner of the square was Khe Sanh. The southwest corner was Dung Ha. The southeast corner, Cam Lo, and Cantien was the other corner, and Goi Lin. All of these places are, that's where we fought. We fought that area, and there was a place called the Rock Pile, and there was an artillery base that became Camp Carroll, which was named after Captain Carroll. So I spent a lot of time in the real war zone. The fighting was constant, pretty much, and that was our area of operation.
What did you hear from your folks while you were there?
Oh, I have a great story. I heard from my folks. My folks would, we could get mail. We got mail periodically, and I'd had such a good time. My 19th birthday. This was my 21st coming up. I was in Vietnam, my 21st birthday, and
January of 68.
Yes, January 60, January 67.
67. Okay.
Yeah, 67, January 67, my 21st birthday, and we happened to be at the Qua Viet River. Okay, we were manning the fuel dumps. And the fuel dump, this is where the ships dock out there and pump fuel into these bladders, as we call them, on the sand, buried in the sand along the Qua Viet River. So we were guarding the river, and I got my care package from home for my birthday. And in it had fruit cake, it had all kinds of goodies that would last. But most of all, it had a battery-powered record player.
Wow.
And we happened to be where we could use it. We had a battery-powered record player, and they sent me all kinds of records. And my stepfather's good friend, one of his favorite songs was Keep On Pushing by The Impression. Mm-hmm. And he sang it all the time, and he sent me that record. And, and that really hooked me back home, home to the streets of Cleveland.
Yeah.
I had a lively squad bunker. We would ambush and patrol one day. We would man the lines one day, and then we'd rest one day. Mm-hmm. And on my squad's day of rest, we'd be in that squad bunker enjoying ourselves and listening to music, because everybody who left for R&R, they brought back things. For me, they brought back batteries.
Yeah.
So we could keep that record player going.
Wow. So that record player belonged to everybody pretty quick.
It was a squad record player. It was a squad record player. Yes, it was.
Oh, I remember we slept in tents, these kind of big tents built on a wooden platform for a long time. Mm-hmm. And a lot of African American guys in our unit. I was in an F3 unit as well. And they called themselves the Brothers. Mm-hmm. And the white guys called them the Brothers. You say that, well, the Brothers, but the music, it's a cliche now, but the music was such a big deal. I know you do today.
Yeah.
You associate, if you hear that song, if you hear the impressions on the radio, it's going to take you back.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Take me right back, yeah. And, there were some other songs, like Bring the Boys Home, and War, What Is It Good For, and things like that. You just, there were songs. There was a great time when you had that little time to spend with your squad in a bunker. And remember, we were guarding a fuel dump, so we all lived in bunkers. Okay, we had to have bunkers underground because they were always trying to blow the fuel dumps up. So everybody lived in a bunker.
You have nicknames? Guys have nicknames?
There were a few guys have nicknames, and I've never had a nickname, so I didn't go nicknames, and I didn't remember too many nicknames, because all growing up, I never had a nickname.
All right, you've mentioned a couple of guys that you remember, but name a couple of more guys that you were in the bunker with.
Oh, I have, we all got promoted, of course. There was Corporal Reeves. Corporal Reeves, I communicate with him today. I communicate with Corporal Robinson still today. And not too long ago, probably about 2 months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, I got a call from one of my guys that he found me on Facebook, and he lives in Alabama. So we talking about getting together. We do get together once in a while. We had a Myrtle Beach. Reeves live only 30 miles from Myrtle Beach, so when we get ready to go, we go visit him so we can go to Myrtle Beach. Because I was stationed over there. I was South Carolina, North Carolina, Camp Lejeune, all around there, Virginia. So I go to the East Coast and kind of hang out with 2 or 3 of the guys that we still around.
What are those reunions like? What do you find yourself talking about?
Everything. We talk about war. We talk about all the people. And Reeves has this memory. He remembers a lot of people that I didn't remember. So he has a great memory. And sometimes we just go out on the beach, sit out there and talk for hours and hours. About the war. We're not, we adjusted. We adjusted. And I can tell you, between my upbringing, and I was raised by a minister, and my upbringing and the fact that I come to realize that everything that I was doing while I was in the Corps was kind of off base for civilian society. So I stopped drinking, I stopped smoking, I stopped womanizing. I stopped doing that because I had to adjust. And once I made adjustment, then I could handle those things. But I was getting where, when I first got out of the service, I couldn't handle them very well.
Tell me a little bit about your grandfather, if you would. He sounds like an extraordinary man.
My grandfather's extraordinary man.
What was his name?
C.C. Watson. Reverend C.C. Watson, Charlie Columbus Watson, my mother's father. And in addition to being a minister, the main thing I remember about him, he was a member of the Tenant Farmers Union. And that was a dangerous thing back then. And he had been a member of it probably about 20, 30 years by the time I was born and can remember. But he was a member of that Tenant Farmers Union from way back. And for those who don't know, even after slavery, people were, quote, free, but they never could leave the land because they never could get out of debt. Because as you farmed every year, even though you had a plot of land, it belonged to somebody else, and as you farmed it, you just didn't quite make it out of debt this year. Plus, they kept your seed, so the next spring you had to buy your seed back, and all of these things. Okay, and so my grandfather joined with that union, and it wasn't just a union of blacks, by the way. It was a class union. It was a union of poor whites, blacks, a few Mexicans at the time that had gotten here and started farming. Most of them were migrant workers, but then there were some who would go to somebody and rent or sharecrop a plot of land. We rented land, and so, but it was hard to get out of debt. So this tenant farming union helped to get people some rights to make a profit from farming.
So you understood that if you want something, respect, or whatever, you stand up for it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Not delving off too into politics, but I registered at 18. I was back to the Rockefeller thing. I registered as a Republican, and I'm still today, although it's really, really, really hard to be because the party has moved so far to the right. But the fact that you need to, you have to make it happen. I know a lot of people think about Tulsa and the bombing of Tulsa in 1921, if nobody's too familiar with that, 1921, 1923, the early 20s. The bombing of Tulsa. Tulsa was a city that had been built by, this section of Tulsa was a city that had been built by blacks. And what amazed me about the whole thing is that they got together and built this entire city that was destroyed. They built it in 13 years. And that always sticks with me because I just think that, I believe in you have to have a bootstrap. But I believe in pulling yourself up by your bootstrap. But what has happened is the system has taken away the boot. So, you can't pull by a bootstrap. Bootstrap is no good if you don't have a boot. And that's what we need. And I've been, I taught my kids that, and I have two of them in business, and the other, well, actually, three of them are actually in business, but one has a business and a full-time job. The other two are in business, and I have a chef at Arkansas State University. So, you have to build. You have to build it. And sure, there's been things that's against us, but we still have to work it.
What'd your grandfather say when you went to Vietnam?
Oh,
about how you, how he thought you should act, how he thought you should be.
He told me basically that, this is a bad deal. It's a bad war, but you're not a bad soldier. That's what he said. You're not a bad soldier. So what you have to do is fight to get back and fight for right when you get back. And that's pretty much, we were never against going because, hey, I was in the military, and that's what we do, military fight. And he understood that, although he was never in the military. He saw his son-in-law. He saw his, matter of fact, his son was a World War II veteran as well. My uncle was a World War II veteran. So they'd been through it. And he actually lived through World War I. He was born in 1892. So
I got back to the States, and what I found more than anything else, and I was there at 67 to 68, and I found a lot of people just didn't want to talk to you about it. A lot of people by that point were just like they had a hangover from Vietnam already. They didn't want to talk about what was going on or how you felt or how it affected you. But what did you run into when you got back from Vietnam?
Well, when I got back from Vietnam, the first thing I remember is landing in San Francisco after a 12-hour flight from Japan. And, people were topless, women were topless, skirts were bottomless. That's the first thing I remember, like, whoa, what are they? What?
Something has changed.
Something has changed in this country. Yeah, that's what I remember immediately. But, people, it's kind of hard to separate. I know a lot of people talk about, that we wasn't wanted, we were spit on, called baby killers and all that. But you see, we were going through a struggle already as black. We had a different struggle. That didn't even bother me as much as the fact that, we were still not being able to go to certain places, certain clubs, certain parts of town, and things still was separate. So it was like, wow, I see what the World War II guys had, because here we are, Vietnam veterans, 20-something years later, and we're still going through the same thing that they went through, and so that's why the fight got so vigorous for it wasn't for integration. And I tell people right now, the entire movement was not about integration. The movement was about equality. And what happened is the equality just wasn't going to happen. It didn't seem. So maybe if we get together, maybe we can pull some things that will make things equal, because it wasn't about integration. It was about equality. Separate could have been equal, and separate would have been all right if it was equal. But integration had to happen because separate was the easy way to keep things unequal. So we figured it made it more difficult to keep things unequal if we were all together. If we go to the same school, if we go to the same places, the same restaurant, the same stores, be able to try on clothes. And this. So some things, integration would give us a semblance of equality. But the whole fight was about equality. It wasn't about integration.
What happened when Dr. King was killed? What happened in your head and in your heart when Dr. King
I was in Baltimore,
this town,
Maryland,
that you knew so well?
I was in Baltimore, Maryland when Dr. King was killed. I had just taken a friend. We had just come off a Caribbean cruise, and I had taken my friend. We called him B-Moore. I guess that was a nickname, because we called him B-Moore because his name was Moore and he was from Baltimore. And anyway, I was in Baltimore that evening, and when Dr. King was killed, and I managed to get out of Baltimore and get to Cleveland. And one of the things that we were advocating, I mean, people started burning, and I just have to admit, we advocated stop burning up 89th Street and and Huff and all these places. These are our places. They're no good, as it is, but this is where we live. Go burn up out there. Go burn up the suburbs. And so that's the way we felt. That's the kind of that was the feeling. Of course, the ghetto got burned, and a lot of it was intentional. Urban renewal, that was a quick way to do urban renewal, is to burn it all down.
And you're in the Marine Corps, and you're a patriot.
I'm a patriot.
So you're.
But I've always been a man that's black that has a problem in this country. So being a patriot, and I'm still a patriot. But at the same time, we have a problem. And I tell people, I gave my 6 years to the government. I did what the government asked me to do. Give me 6 years of commitment of your life. I gave them my 6 years. I gave them 4 active and gave them 2 in reserve. I gave my 6 years. Now, I want the things that everybody else wants in this country. That's not wrong for me to want that, and it's not wrong for me to strive for that and to try to make sure my children have it and my children's children. That's biblical, and that's where I stand. No hard feeling, no nothing. It's just that I want the thing in America that everybody else wants, and I'm going to strive to get it. And that's where I am.
Tell me your life after Vietnam. You've been active with military or veterans organizations. Tell me what you've done with veterans.
Well, from the age of 23 to 57, I didn't do a whole lot of veteran activity. I was doing the things that I just mentioned. I was out there living the American dream, making the American dream happen. And as I said about my wife a few days ago, it's not living the American dream as it is. It's making the American dream what it should be. And that's what I spent my time between 23 and 57 doing. And then I started, I was a computer programmer. Then I went from computer programming to teaching. And I went from teaching to sales. And I spent the bulk of my career in technology sales. And that's basically what I did. Because as a salesperson, I tried to go in business, and I did go in business once, but my efforts to go in business was not as successful as my sales career. And selling is probably the closest thing you can get to independent business ownership without actually owning the business. So that's what I did.
But you worked with helping veterans or talking with other veterans about
Yes, I started, I started in, I guess, 2000. I was 57. It must have been 2003. I started in 2003 working with the Veteran of Foreign Wars. And I'm an all-in kind of person, and I always try to bring something to the table. So I went all in, and I started working with veterans. I started working with the veteran service officers. I started working with the scholarship funds. I just started trying to help build for the veterans. And I became the homeless veteran chairman of the state of Arkansas, and I also became the chaplain of the state of Arkansas. I was the national deputy chief of staff. I just worked. And if you work, people will notice you. You don't have to try to climb the ladder. You build the ladder. And as you build the ladder, you have to go up on the ladder to keep building it. So that's kind of what I did. Just tried to build the ladder, and as we built the ladder, I kind of got all these titles and all. But helping the veteran was the key. So much so that we started another organization called Operation Stand Down Mid-South. Operation Stand Down Mid-South is operating right now, helping veterans in Tennessee, Arkansas, and Mississippi, and headed up by William Jones, I might add. So we just try to do what we can for veterans. Anytime we find a veteran in need, whether it's a need to get benefits, need to get medical attention, need to get housing, we try to work with that veteran. And what we try to do is be a coordinator of resources. Okay, we always try to be a coordinator of resources because we can't do everything for everybody, but we can find the people that can do it. And we coordinate with VA, we coordinate with the homeless shelters, we coordinate with just shelters in general. We coordinate with MIFA and the food place. Whatever we need, we know where to go get it for a veteran. That's basically where we are.
There's a lot of veterans, Vietnam veterans, who've struggled. I mean, you take the people who are roughly our age. I'm a little younger than you, but have gone through the same things that everybody else in society's gone through. They struggle with drugs, struggle with homelessness, struggle with trying to figure out, how to live life. But it just would seem that there are a lot of Vietnam veterans, or perhaps more Vietnam veterans than other people in society who have struggled. Have we as a country treated Vietnam veterans right since the war was over?
I just want to pinpoint, like a pinpoint Vietnam veteran. The U.S. government has never lived up to its promise to its veterans. I mean, from 1775, 6 to this day, they've never lived up to the promise that they promised their veterans when you sign that, that oath to serve the country. When you get out, there were land grants veterans supposed to get land grant. They didn't get the land grant. There were veterans that were supposed to get monies and to be taken care of. And one of the biggest fights in this, somebody need to read General Smedley D. Butler's little 30-page book. It's only about 30 pages. General Smedley D. Butler, Smedley Butler.
Was a Marine general in World War I.
Yeah, and Banana Wars, especially the Banana Wars. But Smedley D. Butler has a book called War is a Racket. And one of the main things about that is Smedley D. Butler is not nearly as well known as Chesty Puller, for the simple reason that he became an activist after he retired. And you go back to the 1930s, you'll find him at a camp in Washington, D.C., where the veterans had marched on the country, on the government, to try to get the benefits that they were promised.
And he speaks to the veterans. I've seen the speech that he gives to the veterans.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Smedley D. Butler is my man.
Yeah. But okay, then you bring up kind of a sore subject. I mean, as long as the war is going on, as long as you need them, you love them.
Yeah.
But then when the war is over, I think it sounds like that's what you're saying, that we're so easy to forget about veterans.
Yes. I kind of liken it unto a dish rag. You wash your dishes, and this is a good dish rag. I want to wash my dishes. But when it gets all greasy and the dishes are clean, but the rag is dirty, then you throw the rag aside.
Yeah.
And that's where our veterans, we got some dirty dish rag veterans. And that's why it's still homelessness, because some of them just absolutely will not accept any help because they've been turned down so much. And you're looking at one. You're looking right now at a veteran who will not bother with VA because I was turned down so much. And then, God blessed me to have decent health, with the exception of my teeth. And I told you about Camp Lejeune and the dirty water, and they want to give people things for ingesting the water and showering in the water, but you brush your teeth usually twice a day with this contaminated water, and they will not give you dental unless you're 100% disabled. And, I'm blessed to be a 10%er and for tinnitus, and so I cannot get any dental. So, we fight fights, and we're still fighting, and there's still fights to be fought. Dental, to me, is one of those fights.
We got about 4 minutes left, and this is a kind of a tough thing to summarize, but invariably, I'll talk to people about Vietnam, and they say, and it must have been horrible, and do you have nightmares? There's a lot of stuff that people have seen in the movies and seen on television that gives them the impression of a certain impression of Vietnam veterans. And I would say, well, no, that's not how I feel. What I remember most vividly are the people that I knew. Tell us, if you would, please, what you remember about Vietnam, the bad and the good.
The bad Vietnam, of course, is all this killing for no reason, because the bottom line is President Johnson and Ho Chi Minh wanted the exact same thing. They wanted a unified Vietnam. The whole fight was about who would control that unified Vietnam. And it got not to be a territorial war where we go take a place and we set up and we gain ground and we move ground. It became a body count war. It was all about body count, and that's the most despicable kind of war that I could see. I'm just going to go out and see how many people I can kill and how many, my people can survive. That was the terrible part of that war. Probably some of the
good part too, though.
Yeah, but some of the best times were, like the squad bunker with the music, and some of the few places I did get to see because I was in that part of the country. I got to see Singapore, I got to see Malaysia, while I was over that way, and Japan. So there were some positives, and the major positive is that I made it back, and I actually brought me with me, because there are so many veterans who are here, their body is here, but their soul is still in Vietnam. And, we left a whole bunch there, but there's probably 3 times as many who came back who only came back in body. Their soul is still there.
You have a lot of pride in having served in the Marine Corps, don't you?
Absolutely. I'm a Marine. I would have been a career Marine if Vietnam hadn't been hanging over my head. Yeah. But I had to get out because I knew I was going back.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I want to thank you very much for being here today. This is Roy Dozier, everybody. Thank you for having gotten through Vietnam in one piece, but more than anything else, and you're saying these things to us today, but I know that you walked around your whole life saying these things to the people that you've met, your family, people you worked with, your friends, etc. And I think the things that you're saying today are things that we should all hear and all be really aware of. So I appreciate you being here. Semper Fidelis to you, Roy Dozier.
Semper Fi. Okay. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us on Vietnam 360. Our email address is vietnamwar360@gmail.com. If you want to get in touch with us, if you know someone that you think might want to be a guest, please get in touch with me. My name is George Larrimore. Again, we're really glad to have Roy Dozier with us today to tell his really compelling stories about time in Vietnam. Thank you very much.
Thank you.